It was a beautiful day today, huh?
Amen.
You guys all get outside?
Amen.
Some fresh air? It was an amazing day today. Well, I see there's a couple new faces in here tonight, so thank you for joining us. And we're going to continue on. Tonight's message has a special place in my heart, because as I was in Hollywood in Los Angeles, I wanted to be an actor so bad. I lived, breathed, slept. I studied everything that actors had to do. So, if you could, acting was my idol. So, the things that I talk about tonight are things that were very dear to me, and it's amazing how God in His mercy has opened my eyes and allowed me to see my folly. And I hope that I can speak God's words tonight. So let's bow our heads and ask God for a word. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for such a beautiful day, the sunshine coming out. Thank you so much for each and every person that showed up here tonight, Lord. I ask that you speak your words through me tonight. Open the ears and the hearts of each and every person. And Lord, I just praise your name for everything that you're doing here at Weimar. I want to ask a special blessing upon this place, upon each and every person, as I've had such a wonderful time fellowshipping with them up here. Lord, just bless this place. Bless this week of prayer. Amen. Amen. So as we kind of get started in tonight's message, I'd actually like to ask a question. Have you ever stopped to consider and think, why do we worship? Why? Why did God create inside of every single being that He's created this need and this desire to worship? You see, what is worship? Is there a right kind of worship? Is there a wrong kind of worship? How often do you hear people today say, well, I worship God in this way? Did God give us a specific way to worship Him? So how important is it to understand what worship is? And how important it is for us in this time as we're drawing near to the end of the world? Isn't this end war going to be about worship? In fact, didn't it start about worship? So as we look at Matthew 4:10, Jesus, speaking to Satan as he was trying to tempt him, said, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and Him only shalt thou serve." And of course, he was getting this from the first commandment. God is the only being that deserves our worship. The only one, coming from Christ's mouth Himself. And also in John 4:23 through 24, this is Jesus speaking to the woman at the well. "But the hour cometh, and now is, that when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship Him. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth." So what this is telling me is, there is a right way to worship God, in spirit and in truth. But what does it mean in spirit? In spirit. What is a spirit? If you just look at a definition of what a spirit is, that non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of your emotions, your character, or your soul. Last night we talked about your character. What is your character made up of? Your thoughts and your feelings. So right here, to worship God, you should worship Him with your thoughts and your feelings and in truth. So let's look at some ways that people thought they were worshiping God, but perhaps weren't. Cain and Abel here. Cain thought he was worshiping God. He actually wanted to worship God. It wasn't that he said, let's worship some other false god. He just said, I want to worship God in this way. God told him a specific order of how to sacrifice to them. And of course, what happened? God was displeased with him. he became angry with his brother and committed the first murder. If we look at the children of Israel, right when Moses went up into the mountain to get the 10 Commandments, and they couldn't even wait for 30 days. I mean, they had just heard the voice of God speaking all these things. And they said, you know what? We don't know where Moses is, so, we need to worship something, anything. I don't know, build something. So all of a sudden, they built this calf, worshipped it, and fell into an apostate state. Now, do you remember the story of Balaam and his donkey? Do you remember what was happening and going on right now? Why Balaam was going to visit the Israelites? Do you remember that whole story? He was going to curse them. But the Israelites were all on the River Jordan. And they were just about ready to cross over into the Promised Land. They'd gotten done with their wandering. They were sitting on the side of the River Jordan. Moses was preparing to occupy Canaan, so he was getting ready the troops, and they were there for a little bit of time. And all of the kings, the Midianite kings, saw the Israelites encamped on the other side of the Jordan. And they all became extremely fearful. They'd heard all the stories. They'd heard how God had led them out of Egypt. Now all of a sudden they know that they're coming into their land to take them. So the Midianite kings were so scared, that's how they called Balaam to come and curse them so that the Midianite kings would actually take them over. Now, if you remember, Balaam said, of course, I can't do anything that God doesn't want me to do, so he went out there to go and curse them, but he ended up blessing them 3 times. Well, the Midianite kings were so angry with him that they sent him back. And, of course, Balaam, because he wanted the money that they were offering to him, came back to them, and he said, you know what? I got a way. I got a way that you can defeat the Israelite army. And they said, okay, we're listening. He said, if you get them to worship anything other than their God will be displeased with them and you will be able to have your way with them. So they thought, okay, this is a great idea. How do we do that? At Balaam's request, he said, start throwing some parties. Start throwing some parties, invite a few of the Israelites, send a few of your women into their camp, and before you know it, they'll witness how you guys worship your gods, and they will fall away from their God. And that's exactly what happened. They started sending in 1, 2, maybe 3 Israelite women at a time, until before they knew it, a lot of the Israelites were going to their parties, bowing down, worshiping to their idols, bringing them back into their camp. And by the time Moses realized what was going on, he had to make a decree. The decree came, you have to slay every single person that was involved in this false worship. Can you imagine? Your brothers, your sisters, these people that you've been traveling around in. And they fell to a huge apostate state, and lots of people lost their lives. Oh, that's my little picture of the Promised Land there. So a warning of worship was issued. And after they have been destroyed before you, be not careful to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? We will do the same. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods they do all kinds of detestable things. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. So they were told, don't even look at the way that they worship. Don't even open up your eyes to it. Otherwise, you might fall prey to worshiping their gods. And perhaps one of the most infamous, I guess you could say, systems of false worship that were set up was Nebuchadnezzar's golden idol. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, of course, standing up there for God. Always fascinates me about this story. How, can you imagine all those people bowing down and you were the only 3 standing up for your God? It's amazing. Amazing. And this story has huge significant implications to us today. These false systems of worship that are set up today. You see, Nebuchadnezzar got